Few film franchises are as universally beloved as Star Wars, but behind every success story is a stumble, setback, or radical change of direction. I consider myself a diehard Star Wars fan, and I was shocked by what creator George Lucas had to go through to get the first movie, A New Hope, made and released his way. Think you know the whole story? Think again! I'm Dan, and I'm here to give you the story behind the Star Wars movie that started it all, Star Wars, A New Hope. Number 1. George Lucas became hot in Hollywood following the creation of the little-known THX 1138, his first feature film. It was produced by, believe it or not, Francis Ford Coppola. Number 2. Lucas then wrote and directed the iconic but intimate American Graffiti, also produced by Francis Ford Coppola through Coppola's American Zoetrope studio, and financed by Universal Pictures. The film was loosely based on Lucas's teen years cruising around Modesto, California. Number 3. Lucas then got a development deal with United Artists to create a space fantasy or space opera film. He wanted the rights to Flash Gordon, but UA couldn't get the rights, so Lucas decided to invent his own version. Number 4. Lucas brainstormed by writing long lists of exotic sounding names, such as Xenos, Star, Mace, Wan, Wan, and Valorum. He then combined them to create full names and added roles. Number 5. Other sources from which George Lucas drew influence are Buck Rogers, J.R.R. Tolkien, and Frank Herbert's Dune. In fact, earlier drafts of the screenplay were so similar to Flash Gordon and Dune, the rights holders forced him to rework his premise even further. Number 6. David Lynch would later turn down the opportunity to direct Star Wars Episode 6 so that he could direct Dune, which is almost like turning down Star Wars to direct Star Wars. Number 7. After the film was rejected by the likes of Universal and United Artists, 20th Century Fox agreed to distribute the ambitious project, since they were already having success in the science fiction genre with the Planet of the Apes movies, the last of which had just been released. Number 8. Lucas took some heat from executives who believed his first draft borrowed too heavily from Flash Gordon and Dune. He made changes, but the iconic crawl sequence was lifted directly from Flash Gordon, as George Lucas wanted to mirror the feeling of its serialized story. Number 9. At the time of the film's production, it was standard for movies to start with opening credits. In fact, the Directors Guild of America mandated it. George Lucas felt so strongly that his film should open with this iconic crawl that he resigned from the Directors Guild of America to preserve his vision. Number 10. Lucas's original pitch from the film was titled The Journal of Willis, and followed a character named Mace Windu, who would later become the Mace Windu character in the prequel trilogy. Another early idea changed for the better. Number 11. Originally, the Force was a large crystal or galactic holy grail called the Kyber Crystal. Although unused in Star Wars A New Hope, this idea was later utilized in the 1978 Star Wars novel, Splinter of the Mind's Eye. Number 12. Universal had a shot to snatch up Star Wars and loved Lucas for making American Graffiti, a film that was a hit for them just a year earlier. But they passed. Likewise, Disney was one of the first companies presented with Lucas's original idea, and they passed. It wasn't until 2013 that Disney was able to buy the franchise from Lucas, but it cost them $4 billion. Talk about your all-time backfires. Number 13. When Lucas's project finally found a home at 20th Century Fox, he hired their effects department to create all the revolutionary visual effects for Star Wars A New Hope. Shortly before production, 20th Century Fox disbanded the entire group. So Lucas, an independent filmmaker to his core, decided to create his own effects studio and called it Industrial Light and Magic. Number 14. Lucas and Industrial Light and Magic revolutionized effects by using, quote, digital motion control photography, where a camera controlled by a computer moves at a steady pace around its subject. In this case, small model spaceships. Number 15. Pro tip, don't look too hard at the props. Many are made from deceivingly ordinary objects. For instance, the control panel of the Death Star is really just a television production switcher. C-3PO and R2-D2's escape pod is made of paint buckets, and the hilt of Luke's lightsaber is just a camera flash tube. Number 16. Moving on to casting. Harrison Ford had tiny roles in Apocalypse Now and American Graffiti and was friends with both directors, but not a star. In fact, during casting, Ford was an assistant to Lucas for months before getting the role. During casting sessions, he would read lines with the actors trying out for the film. Number 17. Eventually, Lucas was won over by Ford's portrayal in these casting sessions and cast him in the role that would change his life forever. At the time, Harrison Ford's main source of income was from being a carpenter. Number 18. After getting the role, Ford was very direct with Lucas about some of the film's wooden dialogue, something Lucas had always taken heat for. Ford is quoted as saying, quote, "You can type this shit, George, but you sure can't say it." Number 19. Allegedly, Ford did not know any of his lines, sometimes on purpose. One famous example is this comedic intercom conversation where Han, dressed as a stormtrooper, pretends to be a commanding officer. Ford claims this was done so that the conversation would sound spontaneous.
Everything's perfectly all right now. We're fine. We're all fine here now. Thank you. How are you?
Number 20. Rewrites. Luke Skywalker's character in various drafts went from being a 60-year-old general to a member of a family of dwarves. Of course, Luke and his family didn't end up being dwarves in the final draft, but Lucas held on to the idea of the dwarf hero and eventually used this concept years later in his film Willow. Number 21. Lucas originally wrote Luke Skywalker to be Luke's Starkiller. The name was eventually changed to avoid any associations with Charles Manson, who famously blamed Hollywood and the record industry for not seeing his brilliance, and went on to order his followers to kill star Sharon Tate and others in his name. Number 22. Speaking of Luke, guess how the unknown actor Mark Hamill won the role? A friend of Hamill's overheard the auditions and thought he would be perfect for it, and tipped him off. Who says all actors are cutthroat? By the way, the actor that tipped off Mark Hamill, Robert Englund, who you may probably know as Freddy Krueger. Sweet guy, turns out. Number 23. The character Chewbacca was inspired by George Lucas's dog, Indiana, an Alaskan Malamute, who of course was the inspiration for the naming of Indiana Jones. Number 24. The name Chewbacca is derived from a Russian word I can't pronounce. I think it's Sabaka. Sabatka? This word means dog in Russian, apparently. Number 25. Speaking of Chewbacca, Peter Mayhew is the actor in that furry costume. He's 7'3" in real life, no tricks were used to make him look tall on screen. Number 26. Believe it or not, Mayhew was given the option to play either Chewie or Darth Vader. He chose Chewie in a move he may regret given Vader's status as an American cultural icon. Mayhew said he just wanted to play a hero. Number 27. One more fun fact about Mayhew, he was not an actor. He was a porter at a London hospital and was discovered after being profiled in an article on people with big feet. Movie producers read the article and started casting him in roles requiring giant people with few speaking lines. Number 28. Chewbacca's voice was created by sound designer Ben Burtt. Burtt researched and combined the wailings of walruses, lions, camels, bears, rabbits, tigers, and badgers. According to Burtt, the primary influence in Chewie's voice is a black bear named Tarek from the Happy Hollow Zoo in San Jose, California. Number 29. Famously, Chewbacca has the last line in the film, his trademark Wookiee growl. Number 30. Here's an Easter egg from before they were even called Easter eggs. There's a tiny Playboy centerfold and Star Wars movie poster inside of the Rebel Blockade Runner model used in the opening scene. How they put a poster in while they were doing that? I have no idea. Number 31. Another Easter egg from before they were even called Easter eggs. The $6 Million Man makes a cameo. A scaled-down land speeder model was used for effect shots and was filled with a scaled-down model of the characters. Number 32. Lucas originally wrote Tatooine to be a jungle planet, but didn't want to film in jungle because he would feel, quote, itchy. Lucas instead opted for making Tatooine a desert planet and settled on filming in a desert in Tanzania. Number 33. As it turns out, filming in a desert has its downsides too. On day one of production, Tunisia was hit with its first rainstorm in 50 years, pushing back production by about a week. Number 34. During the rainstorm, some of the sets and props were blown apart, like the sandcrawler, and parts were getting stuck in the mud. Those parts then had to be lifted via truck, but the trucks also got stuck in the mud. Number 35. Speaking of Tatooine, the Lars family have been moisture farmers for at least 3 generations. Luke is the third. For those of you who don't know what moisture farming is, it's farming for water on arid planets. Number 36. In the beginning of A New Hope, we learned that Luke was raised by his aunt and uncle Beru and Owen Lars. While he is technically related to them through marriage, they aren't blood related. Luke's biological grandmother was Owen's stepmother, who is, I guess, the Virgin Mary in the Star Wars universe. Heyo! Luke's home planet is never referred to by name in this movie, but was called Utapau in the script. Later, Lucas renamed it Tatooine after the desert location, Tatooine. It was first called this in Empire Strikes Back. Number 38. The interiors of Luke's house were filmed at the Hotel Sidi Driss, which is still an open and functioning hotel in Tunisia, and a popular tourism site for hardcore fans. Number 39. Lucas rebelled against the idea that the future was shiny and bright, like its portrayal in other sci-fi films. He preferred the idea of, quote, used future, where things were aged, deteriorating, and worn. This gave an air of authenticity to everything in the Star Wars universe, until Episode 1. But I'll stay off my soapbox for now. Number 40. Sound designer Ben Burtt, who would win an Academy Award for his work on A New Hope, made the chirps and beeps for R2-D2 by running his own chirps and beeps through a synthesizer. Burtt was also the voice of Darth Vader. Actually, he was the breath of Darth Vader. That famous breathing sound came from Burtt breathing through a scuba mask with a microphone. Number 41. James Earl Jones was the voice of Vader, of course, but before he was cast, he was an accomplished but little-known actor, having bit parts in big movies like Doctor Strangelove and TV movies like Roots. That all changed following the release of A New Hope. David Prowse is actually the man in the Vader costume, but his English accent would have been less intimidating than James Earl Jones's dulcet tones.
You are part of the Rebel Alliance and a traitor.
Number 42. One other super famous voice was considered for Vader, Orson Welles. But the iconic director's voice was too well known and his difficult personality too well documented. Number 43. Speaking of quick, Darth Vader only has 12 minutes of screen time in A New Hope. 10% of the entire film. Maybe that's why he's so scary. We never had a chance to get comfortable with him. Number 44. In fact, Vader was originally such a minor character that he was written without his black suit and helmet in early drafts. And in what would have been a disastrous decision, Vader was killed in a firefight in early drafts of A New Hope. Mr. Lucas, rewrites are your friends. Number 45. A fun Easter egg in Lucas's vision. Vader is a Dutch word for father, and in German, Vater means father. I can only assume that this meant that Dutch and German audiences were very underwhelmed by the shocking reveal that Darth Vader was Luke's father in Empire Strikes Back. Number 45. True artist that he is, James Earl Jones requested to be uncredited in the film, fearing he would be typecast. Many think this added to his and Vader's mystique. Number 47. Moving on to Obi-Wan, the Wise Master. He was originally meant to survive the film, but Alec Guinness and George Lucas agreed he had to die to leave the legacy for Luke to carry on. Number 48. So, you'd think Obi-Wan would remember R2-D2 and C-3PO after his interactions with them in the prequel movies, right? However, he never explicitly says that he doesn't remember them, only that he doesn't seem to remember owning a droid. This is technically true, as C-3PO was Anakin's.
I don't seem to remember ever owning a droid.
Number 49. Though the Clone Wars were first mentioned by Obi-Wan in this movie, they were never given an explanation until the release of Attack of the Clones, 25 years later. It is believed that they had no formal definition at the time and that their mention was just an example of universe building by George Lucas. Number 50. When Obi-Wan cuts off Ponda Baba's arm in the Mos Eisley Cantina, the severed limb is clearly seen bleeding. In later installments, it became established that lightsabers will instantly cauterize a wound. In George Lucas's defense, the blood spurts are awesome. Number 51. Earmuffs. The style of music played by the band in the Mos Eisley Cantina is called jizz. Number 52. Let's talk about Han Solo. Guess who he's based on? Francis Ford Coppola, of all people. Number 53. By now, everyone's heard of the Han shot first controversy. How in the original first cut of the film, Solo shoots Greedo during their encounter in the Mos Eisley Cantina. In the 1997 re-release, the scene was changed so that Greedo shoots at Solo first, and it was changed again in a 2004 re-release so that the two fire at nearly the same time. So which way is the right way? While George Lucas claims that Han was always intended to shoot second, the script itself has Han making the sudden first move. So, technically Han did shoot first. Harrison Ford has weighed in on the subject, saying, quote, "I don't know, and I don't care," making us love him even more. Number 54. You're probably recognizing a theme here. George Lucas loves to pull from his own life and work it into his films. Case in point, he says he came up with the name R2-D2 when he went to retrieve reel 2 of the second dialogue track. The sound engineer abbreviated it by saying, quote, "Could you get R2-D2 for me?" And the rest is film history. Number 55. Another example of Lucas pulling from life. The term Jedi is pulled from two words meaning soap opera in Japanese. Lucas was in Japan, saw the words on screen, and loved them. Number 56. Lucas was also great about using mistakes to his advantage. Vader's breathing mask was not a part of the original script. Production designer Ralph McQuarrie actually recommended it, noticing that Vader would need a helmet, like the stormtroopers had, to be able to breathe while traveling from his ship to the rebel ship. Lucas kept it as part of the character because of how threatening it appeared. A proper canonical explanation was not given until Empire Strikes Back. Number 57. Similarly, the crevice around the Death Star was not part of the plan either. Model maker Colin Cantwell produced a sculpture of the Imperial battle station using two domes, but the material he used shrank, creating a ditch between the two halves. He recommended to Lucas that they keep the crevice and implemented it into the climax. Lucas loved the idea, so it stuck. Number 58. Actors struggled with filming conditions. C-3PO's eyes were covered with gold so that they wouldn't corrode, making Anthony Daniels effectively blind while in the suit. Number 59. Mark Hamill broke a blood vessel in his face while holding his breath during the trash compactor scene. You'll notice many shots feature only half Mark Hamill. Number 60. Grand Moff Tarkin's boots were too small for actor Peter Cushing's feet. He only wore them during shots where they were visible, and the rest of the time he wore a pair of fuzzy slippers. The slippers were later put on display at the Whitstable Museum in Kent. Number 61. Carrie Fisher also struggled with wardrobe issues. She not only disliked her iconic hair buns, but also her outfit, as it completely concealed her figure. Not only that, but her breasts had to be taped down because no underwear could be worn underneath. Or in her words, because, quote, there are no breasts in space. Number 62. When stormtroopers storm the control room where C-3PO and R2-D2 are hiding, one of them famously bumps his head. A comedic bonk sound effect was added in the 2004 re-release.
Take over.
And the incident was paid homage in Attack of the Clones, wherein Jango Fett hits his head entering his spacecraft. The identity of the original stormtrooper remains a mystery, as many actors have claimed that they also bumped their heads while wearing their helmets. This just confirms what I've long suspected, that all stormtroopers have terrible aim. Number 63. Even the crew were disenchanted by the production, labeling it a silly children's film amongst themselves. In the closing sequence, extras were rumored to be mocking the actors as they walked down the aisle, believing the film would be a flop. Number 64. A big part of the problem was Lucas's shyness. He rarely spoke to the actors and crew, and when he did, it was reported to be soft and mumbly. Lucas gave minimal direction to his actors, mainly just advising them to be faster and more intense. This became a running gag on set to the point where, when Lucas lost his voice one day, they gave him cue cards with those words written on them. Number 65. The Death Star blueprints shown in the Rebel grid plan, which were made by two students at Cal Arts, are actually different from the final design seen on screen. The animation was already completed by the time the prop design was updated. Number 66. The chess-like board game in the Millennium Falcon is called Dejaric, and it uses holograms of real species as pieces. There are actual rules too, but they have never been released to the public. Number 67. There is a famous blooper of Mark Hamill yelling, "Carrie!" rather than Leia, after greeting the character near the end of the movie. Mark Hamill, however, claims that this alleged slip-up has always been false, and that he was really saying, "There she is." The "is," he says, was cut off by the sound designers. Number 68. Aside from the background extras, Princess Leia and Beru Mars are the only female roles in the movie, and 2 of the 3 in the entire trilogy. Number 69. Luke's X-Wing call sign is Red 5. It was also Anakin's call sign during the Clone Wars. Number 70. In the scene where the Red Squadron assembles, Luke reunites with his old friend Biggs Darklighter. Earlier scenes that developed their friendship were cut from the final film for time, but were recovered by documentarian Jamie Benning in his film, Blast It Biggs, Where Are You? Number 71. The line "Blast It Biggs, Where Are You" was changed in a later release from Luke's original line, "Blast it Wedge, Where Are You?" We know where Biggs went though, which begs the question, where's Wedge? Number 72. In real life, the actor who played Wedge, Dennis Lawson, is the uncle of Ewan McGregor, who would later play Obi-Wan in the prequel series. Coincidence? Yeah, we think yes. Number 73. All the challenges of production led to Lucas being diagnosed with hypertension and exhaustion. Doctors were worried he would keel over from stress. Number 74. During production, Lucas had a revelation and changed the name of the film from The Star Wars to just Star Wars. Seems small, but what would the Facebook be without the in front of it? Number 75. The studio never made life for Lucas any easier. They hated the title Star Wars and received negative market testing. They didn't believe women would show up for a movie with Ward in the title. Number 76. Lucas fought for the name, and during the ongoing fight, cast and crew members were allegedly asked to pitch in ideas for new titles, undermining Lucas further. No title stood out, and Star Wars stuck. Again, the rest is film history. Number 78. Lucas ran way over budget, with special effects eating up 5 of the 8 million originally allotted for the entire movie. Execs were not pleased. One of the reasons execs were upset, $2.5 million was spent on 4 sequences that Lucas rejected for use in the film. Number 79. Incredible models were built for the effects sequences, including 2 models of the Death Star. They made 2 so they could blow one up. Did you know? The Death Star is called the Death Star because it could blow up an entire planet with its super laser? Of course you did. You're a super fan. Number 80! Lucas hated the first cut of the film and publicly called it, quote, a disaster. Lucas fired his editor when the editor refused to change the cut, probably because the studio supported the editor, not Lucas, and replaced him with Paul Hirsch and Richard Chew, and his then wife, Marcia Lucas. Legend has it that a young budding A-list filmmaker named Martin Scorsese helped Marcia Lucas edit the film in New York between shoots of his own. Number 81. Eventually, Lucas showed the film to the studio and they loved it. Lucas was shocked, and in fact this made him more distrust the final film. He also got the word that only 40 theaters had agreed to show the film at this point, which destroyed any confidence he was holding on to. Number 82. He showed it to Spielberg, who was filming Close Encounters of the Third Kind at the time, and Spielberg loved it. Lucas, still doubting his film, bet Spielberg 2.5% of Star Wars profit in exchange for 2.5% of Close Encounters profit. That 2.5 has given Spielberg millions, and counting. Number 83. Lucas, being Lucas, was sure the film would flop. He and his wife fled to Hawaii with Steven Spielberg instead of attending the premiere. Number 84. That trip to Hawaii, by the way, wasn't a total bust. They took the opportunity to come up with Raiders of the Lost Ark, so there's that. Number 85. Star Wars was an instant smash hit, earning a reported $775 million worldwide, which in today's dollars, adjusting for inflation, is an estimated $3 billion. The original budget, by the way, $11 million. That's around $30 million in 2015 dollars. Number 86. Star Wars was the only second film in history to gross more than $100 million at the US box office, the first being Jaws. Spielberg and Lucas had cemented their legacies as the men behind the summer blockbuster era that has endured for over 40 years. Number 87. The film was so popular, over 60 theaters played it continuously for over a year. Number 88. The film was so financially successful that 20th Century Fox's stock price doubled during the first month of the film's release. Number 89. Adjusted for inflation, it's the second highest grossing film of all time. Number 90. Kenner Toys obtained the merchandising rights to Star Wars without realizing how big of a hit it would be. They weren't prepared to supply the massive demand for the toys, especially around Christmas. This led to the infamous empty box campaign, during which kids were essentially given IOUs for the action figures for later. The toys ultimately showed up in March, months later. Number 91. The circus-style movie poster by artist Drew Struzman was inspired by advertisements of the 1940s serials that inspired the movie. George Lucas was a big fan of Struzman's work, that he was brought on for the prequels, re-releases, and Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom poster. Number 92. Star Wars was famously parodied in the 1987 Mel Brooks comedy Spaceballs. Brooks was allowed to make it under the condition that there would be no action figures. Number 93. Star Wars A New Hope went on to receive 10 Academy Award nominations, winning 7. It was the first sci-fi film to ever be nominated for Best Picture. It lost to Annie Hall, another masterpiece about as far away in genre, scope, and tone as you can get from Star Wars. Number 94. Lucas also lost Best Director that year to Woody Allen, who didn't even show up to the awards ceremony. Oh, and Lucas also lost Best Original Screenplay to Woody Allen, who, again, wasn't there. Number 95. Star Wars did win Best Sound, Best Editing, Best Visual Effects, Best Costume Design, Best Set Design, and Best Original Score. Number 96. Star Wars also won a Special Achievement Academy Award for the design of the robotic and animal voices and tones he created from scratch. Admittedly, I don't know what that is. We don't do that every year. Number 97. Here are a couple of completely random awesome facts. The sound of Vader crushing Captain Antilles' neck is terrifying. It's actually sound designer Ben Burtt crushing walnuts into a microphone.
Release him.
As you wish.
Number 98. Han Solo's iconic line, "I got a bad feeling about this," was so popular that it was used in each subsequent film. The line was so popular that Spielberg and Lucas gave it to Indiana Jones in Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. Number 99. At 121 minutes, A New Hope is the shortest film in the series. Number 100. Do you like Comic-Con? Star Wars early footage and promo material was brought to an early version of San Diego Comic-Con, way back before it was a mega conference it is now that no one can get into because the internet isn't strong enough. And way before other blockbusters realized they could get attention there as well. Number 101. Lucas hired composer John Williams because Spielberg told him to. Always listen to Spielberg. Williams conducted the London Symphony Orchestra to record the Star Wars soundtrack. They did so in 12 days. John Williams 2 years earlier created the iconic Jaws theme music. The man knows how to score a film, alright? Number 102. You didn't think we'd forget about the lightsaber, did you? Remember how Lucas's early drafts were, let's just say, different? Guess what the original lightsabers were called? Laser swords! Yeah, that's badass. You know, it's a little on the nose, but... Number 103. In the Star Wars universe, lightsabers can be any color. I will always think of them as green, blue, and red, but I'm a purist. Lightsabers can even be black. It's called, wait for it, the dark saber. Number 104. The original prop lightsabers were constructed from several other sources. A World War II rifle grenade, a jet engine fuel injector valve, pieces of pocket calculators, and other metal parts and bits. Number 105. Last but not least, the iconic lightsaber sound effect. It was discovered almost by accident while sound designer Ben Burtt was tinkering with old movie projectors, old television sets, and weird microphone angles. I wish I could explain it better than that. Burtt was a genius. Number 106. Star Wars A New Hope was added into the United States National Film Registry in 1989 due to its cultural significance. Number 107. Speaking of genius, Lucas most certainly is. Like many geniuses, he can't stop tinkering. He's re-released Star Wars several times, changing dialogue, effects, soundtracks, and even adding scenes. Fans are split on how they feel about this, though most people definitely probably prefer the original. Thanks for watching Cinematica's 107 Facts You Should Know About Star Wars Episode 4, A New Hope. Like what you saw, we've got 107 facts you should know about Star Wars Episode 5, The Empire Strikes Back, coming out next week. And if you love obsessing over movies and TV, be sure to tell your friends. Like this video and subscribe to Cinematica, where we help you watch smarter.